Foundations of Amateur Radio. Where are all the amateurs is a question that I'm asked regularly by new entrants into our community. The journey most new amateurs go through, and the one I followed, starts with becoming interested, getting a license, buying a radio, setting it up, and then turning on your radio. If you're lucky, you are at this point surrounded by other amateurs, hopefully in a club setting, or you have a friend nearby and you're off and running. The reality is likely that even after a successful first on-air adventure, you'll be on your own in your shack asking yourself where everyone went. I've talked in the past about picking the right day. For example, a Wednesday is likely to have less people on air than a Saturday, but that's only part of the story. One of the things that has never occurred to me until a while after I became an amateur is that listening is a really important way to find other amateurs. Let's start with some things that might not have occurred to you. Most amateurs are not in your time zone. There is amateur radio activity almost all the time, 24/7 on whatever the appropriate band is. Not all bands sound the same. What worked yesterday might not work today. This hobby isn't exact or precise. That is, there are an infinite number of variables which each affect the experience either positively or negatively, and even if you used your radio in exactly the same way, in the same settings, on the same band, in the same location, at the same time with the same antenna, the landscape around you has changed. The ionosphere is a lot like the ocean, flat and calm one day, storms and waves the next. Those things aside, each of which could be a whole story, is only part of the story of finding other amateurs. There is a tendency for new amateurs to think of frequencies as numbers, as parameters to add to your radio. Pick 7.093 MHz, pick 21.250 MHz, or 28.500 MHz. They're just numbers, things that you pick with your radio, set up your antenna to, and listen. That's part of the story, but there is another part. If you think of light and you go from infrared through visible light through to ultraviolet light and beyond, all you're doing is changing a number, from somewhere around 300 GHz through to 3 petahertz. It's a long dial in amateur radio terms, but the difference is just a number, right? It should be obvious that the human day-to-day experience of infrared and ultraviolet are completely different. The 28.5 MHz 10-meter band frequency is on the same spectrum as both infrared and ultraviolet, but you don't expect to see these frequencies or use them in the same way. The same is true for amateur radio bands. The 80-meter band, the 40-meter band, 15 meters and 10 meters are all different. They're in use by radio amateurs, but their experience is also completely different. Some are good for daytime communications, others for nighttime. Some work regardless of the solar cycle, others need solar flux. Magnetic activity affects some bands more than others, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. If you have a handheld radio and you're used to listening to a local 2-meter repeater, it's likely that you've set up the squelch on your radio to hide noise, and your day-to-day experience is one where there is silence when nobody is talking. You might tune to 15 meters and look for the same silence, only to learn later on that noise is what you're actually looking for. The sounds that the 10-meter band makes is different than the 80-meter band. The 20-meter band responds differently to changing conditions to the 40-meter band, and every different radio you use has a different feel, so what you're used to with one radio will be different on another. All this to say that the way you find other amateurs is to listen. You'll need to get a feel for this thing, a sense of opportunity. I've compared amateur radio to fly fishing on more than one occasion. Standing up to your armpits in a river, tossing out a line, finding a bite will be different depending on the day, the temperature, how much you've moved around, and the appetite of the fish around you at the time. The more you do this, the more you get a sense of opportunity and the better your results. Instantaneous gratification is going to be elusive. Get used to it. Be patient, be curious, and experiment. I'll leave you with this image. I'm currently standing in my wardrobe, surrounded by clothes, shoes, boxes and jumpers in the middle of my home with the door closed, crammed in with my microphone stand, a laptop and a tablet, in an attempt to ward off the background noise that comes from a winter storm that is currently overhead, unleashing the first rain of the season in spectacular style. Some days I fantasized that my budget could manage a recording studio, or even a soundproof booth. I'm Onno, Victor Kilo 6, Foxtrot Lima Alpha Bravo.